Have you ever felt that, no matter how hard you try, certain people just don't connect with you intensely? Have you ever had the feeling of always being the cool, but never the unforgettable? The truth is that most people have never learned how to use the silent power of the human mind to become someone impossible to ignore. And erase the shock. The secrets to arousing emotional obsession aren't in sweet words or games of conquest. They're in stoicism, strategic coolness, and a deep understanding of human psychology. That's right. The art of drawing someone deep begins with you mastering your own inner universe. We are not talking about cheap manipulation, but about real magnetism, built on self-control, striking presence, and emotional reading. And you know what's even more curious? The people who arouse the most desire are precisely those who are not desperate for attention. In this video, I'm going to show you the triggers that arouse obsession on a psychological level, triggers that the Stoics applied without even needing social media. You will understand how Luke, an ordinary figure, went from invisible to irresistible by applying these concepts accurately. Be prepared to see each interaction with different eyes. But first, a warning: with great power comes great responsibility. What you'll learn here can completely change the way you relate to the world, and with those who observe you in silence. Have you ever wondered why some people manage to hold the attention of everyone around them without even saying a word? This isn't luck, innate charisma, or magic. It's psychology applied quietly and strategically. Intense attraction, the one that borders on obsession, has less to do with appearance and more to do with what you activate inside the other's mind. And when you understand that, you start playing the influence game on a whole new level. Most people live believing that being desired is a matter of visible effort, pleasing, complimenting, being present. But the greatest masters of influence know that the real power lies in creating emotional impact without seeming like you're trying. It's like lighting a match and calmly waiting for the flame to spread while the other doesn't even realize that you were the one who started the fire. The key to all this is in the psychological triggers. Small stimuli that activate desires, needs, and deep emotions in other people. And, contrary to what many think, they don't need to be manipulative. When used with awareness and respect, these triggers don't just attract, they create connection. A connection that holds, marks, and turns into something difficult to forget. In this video, you'll learn how to apply this ethically, strategically, and almost invisibly. It's not about being fake or creating a persona. It's about understanding human behavior in its purest form and using it as a mirror to reflect your own power. From now on, your every word, gesture, and silence can become a seed of attraction, if you know how to plant. Before diving into the strategies that can turn your presence into something irresistible, we need to talk about something fundamental: responsibility. Influence is a powerful tool, and like any sharp tool, it can make or break it. When you master people's emotional triggers, you literally have the power to shape decisions, affect mental states, and even direct feelings. And this cannot be used lightly. Imagine that you have discovered a formula to make anyone pay attention to you, trust you, and even fall in love. What would you do with this knowledge? Would you use it to win over someone who doesn't feel the same? Would you play on the emotions of others out of pure ego? The truth is, when you manipulate without awareness, the effect can even come quickly. But the consequence comes even faster, and often more painful. So, erase a golden rule: never use what you're going to learn here to control, deceive, or diminish someone. Use it to expand connections, develop empathy, and strengthen relationships. The true master of influence is the one who chooses to use his power wisely, who understands that influence is to serve, not to subjugate. This requires emotional maturity, and also deep self-knowledge. If you just want to conquer out of vanity or feed your wounded ego, this video is not for you. But if you're willing to grow as a human being, understand others, and become someone more magnetic and conscious, then keep going. What comes next isn't just about making someone want you, it's about becoming someone people admire, trust, and never forget. Have you ever met someone who didn't even need to speak loudly to master an environment? Who arrived, smiled discreetly and, suddenly, everyone wanted to know more about her. These people have an invisible, almost enigmatic magnetism, and the most interesting thing is that many times they are not even the most beautiful, rich or extroverted. What they have is presence. And presence, my friend, is pure psychological power. The secret lies in how they position themselves emotionally in the world. Magnetic people don't beg for attention, they become so self-centered, so aligned with their own energy, that they automatically attract others. It's as if they emit a silent field that whispers, "There's something here you need to figure out." And the human brain, driven by curiosity and search for meaning, cannot resist this call. These people dominate, even unconsciously, the game of perception. They know how to use silence as speech, gaze as an invitation, and time as a construction tool. They are not in a hurry, they are not too justified, and they do not reveal themselves completely right away. This creates an air of mystery that instigates. After all, what's more compelling than something you can't decipher right away? The good news is that it can be learned. Yes, magnetism is not a magical gift reserved for a few. It's a trainable skill, which starts with your self-knowledge and small changes in the way you behave socially. In the next topics, you will discover how to awaken this power in a natural way, without seeming forced, and how to transform simple interactions into remarkable experiences. The way people see you is not only based on what you say, but mainly on what you awaken in them. This is psychological perception and unconscious reading that the brain makes with each gesture, word, tone of voice, or even silence of yours. And here's the bottom line: the more you master your own emotional language, the more control you have over what others feel around you. Mental triggers are like hidden switches in the mind. When activated, they cause automatic reactions. Think about when you hear a song that reminds you of someone, or a smell that takes you straight back to childhood. That's a trigger in action. And in the social and emotional field, these triggers can be used to arouse confidence, desire, empathy, or even emotional dependence. It all depends on the intention. For example, when you demonstrate security in moments of tension, you activate the trigger of authority. When you share something personal, you activate the vulnerability and create connection. The secret is to use these stimuli with subtlety. No exaggeration or theatricality. It's like watering a plant. Small, consistent doses pack a powerful punch over time. Want to train your perception? Start by observing the micro reactions in conversations: the raising of eyebrows, a sigh, a slight withdrawal from the body. Every detail communicates. The more you develop this sensitivity, the more power you will have to influence without seeming like you're trying. And in the next topic, let's dive into the crucial difference between being nice and be unforgettable. Being nice is easy. A smile at the right time, a well-placed compliment, and that's it. You score points with almost anyone. But sympathy, alone, does not generate obsession. People like those who are nice, but they forget easily. Now, when you activate deep emotions, you create a connection that goes beyond the surface and goes straight into emotional memory. That's when the obsession starts to form. Obsession is not born of something pleasant, but of something that leaves emotional marks. Do you know that person who made you laugh on an ordinary day, or who understood you in a difficult moment? These experiences create emotional anchors. And the human brain loves what provokes intense emotion, whether it's joy, surprise, challenge, or even a slight discomfort that stimulates curiosity. Obsession is raw emotion, not polished logic. Want a practical example? People who say everything we think want to please. Those that say what we need to hear, even if it hurts a little, make us reflect and remember. Sympathy feeds the now, but obsession is fueled by "I need more of this." If you want to be unforgettable, you need to offer something that most people are afraid of: emotional depth with firmness of character. The key is to balance presence with mystery, empathy with autonomy. Don't give everything away. Don't over-explain. Don't always be available. Allow the person to discover you little by little, in layers. This emotional journey, one of discovery, doubt, and wonder, is what ignites the spark of obsession. And in the next topic, you will see this happening in practice with Luke's story. Lucas was the typical invisible guy. Present everywhere, but rarely remembered. He wasn't the prettiest or the funniest, but he had a natural curiosity about people. Instead of trying to impress, he began to observe. And that's when everything changed. By understanding the patterns of behavior around him, he stopped reacting and started to conduct interactions with emotional intelligence. Once, in a circle of friends, Lucas did something simple. He listened more than he spoke. And when he spoke, he made such a precise observation about someone in the circle, that everyone was silent for a few seconds. It wasn't an obvious compliment, nor a joke, it was an emotional read that revealed depth. From that moment on, they began to look for him for advice, conversations, and even secrets. Lucas understood something that few realize: when you see what others don't see and express it with subtlety, you become magnetic. People began to feel emotionally exposed around him, but not in a bad way. It was as if he had the key to something that even they themselves didn't know existed. And this generated something stronger than admiration: emotional dependence disguised as friendship. But Lucas also knew how to dose. He was not always present, did not respond immediately, and rarely explained himself. This created the ideal contrast: depth, scarcity. The result? He became an enigmatic, indispensable, and emotionally addictive figure for many people. And in the next topic, we'll explore how he and you can identify people's emotional weaknesses to further deepen that influence. Everyone has an emotional weakness, a scar, an insecurity, an unmet need. And guess what? These gaps are the gateways to deep connections. Knowing how to identify them is not a matter of being manipulative, but of being observant. When you realize what touches someone emotionally, you gain the map of your internal world. And who dominates this map? Dominates the game. Luke, for example, watched the repeated words, the involuntary gestures, and the uncomfortable pauses. When someone talked about his father and looked away, he knew there was a wound there. When another changed his tone of voice when talking about his career, he understood insecurity. Small behavioral cues reveal big emotional truths. Just be present and attentive to what's behind the words. Most people live in automatic mode. They hear, but they don't listen. They see, but they do not perceive. If you want to stand out, develop the habit of emotional reading. Observe expressions, changes in posture, even deeper breaths during delicate conversations. These are signs that something has been touched, and that's often where the point of greatest influence lies. But beware, identifying is not synonymous with exploiting in a negative way. On the contrary, it is an opportunity to truly connect. When you understand another's pain, you can be the one who brings security, understanding, or even healing. In the next topic, we'll explore the first and perhaps the most common of emotional triggers: the desire for validation. Every human being, at some level, wants to be seen. He wants to feel that what he does, feels, or thinks has value. This is the desire for validation, one of the most powerful emotional triggers, and often the most disguised. Sometimes it appears as vanity, others, as the need for approval disguised as humility. But deep down, we all want to hear, "You matter. I see you." Lucas realized this early. Instead of praising the obvious such as appearance or achievement, she validated what no one noticed. When someone told a story, he would say, "I realized how brave you were to go through with it, even though you were afraid." This invisible validation, which touches internal, unrecognized parts, is what really marks. What's more, it generates a deep and emotionally addictive bond. Using this trigger strategically is simple, but it requires sensitivity. Listen beyond what is being said. Validate intentions, efforts, vulnerabilities. When someone shares something sensitive, don't interrupt them with quick advice. Say, "I understand why it affected you so much." This answer, as simple as it may seem, fills in old emotional gaps. And those who do this become memorable. But here's the secret: the most powerful validation doesn't come when the person expects it, but when they didn't even know they needed it. That's when you recognize something that she herself has neglected: a strength, a value, an unnamed pain. This creates an almost immediate emotional effect. And now that you understand the first trigger, in the next topic we will explore one of the greatest human fears: the fear of failure. The fear of failure is one of the biggest emotional ghosts of modern society. It paralyzes decisions, sabotages relationships, and, ironically, is the fuel behind many masks of self-confidence. Even the most successful people carry this fear. They've just learned to hide it better. And that's precisely where the key lies. When you identify this subtle fear in someone, you have the chance to create connection on a level that few reach. Lucas knew this. He didn't make fun of those who said, "I don't know if I can do it." Listened, analyzed, and said something like, "You don't think you're ready? Or are you afraid that if you try, you'll find that you're not good enough?" This seemingly simple question disarms. Because it touches right at the core of fear: doubt about one's own worth. And when you show that you see it without judging, you gain immediate confidence. Using this trigger ethically requires balance. It's not about exposing the weakness of the other, but about creating an environment where they can talk about it without fear. What's more, where you can offer true support or encouragement. You become, then, the one who not only perceives the silent pain, but he who is not frightened by it. And this is rare. And rarely, in the emotional world, is it irresistible. And here's a practical tip: when someone talks about a dream they haven't fulfilled yet, listen carefully. Often, the fear of failure appears camouflaged in phrases such as "I don't have time," "Now is not the time," or "There is a lot of competition." If you know how to read between the lines, you will realize that behind every excuse, there is an insecurity waiting to be welcomed. And in the next topic, we'll go further. We'll explore how emotional traumas also shape how people connect and cling. Emotional traumas are like invisible scars. They can't be seen, but they shape everything from the way a person relates to the way they see themselves. And as much as someone seems strong, independent, or even indifferent, these traumas are still there, influencing decisions and reactions. When you understand this, you begin to see beyond the behavior and start to see what really needs to be touched. Luke learned to recognize these subtle signs. Once, when talking to a colleague who always kept control of everything, he said, "Don't you get tired of always being in charge?" She smiled, disengaged, but later confessed that the controller was a shield created after an unstable childhood. That conversation created a deep bond because he didn't just see the behavior, he understood the root of it. Touching trauma does not mean pressing or digging pain, but rather creating space for the person to feel safe enough to open up. And here comes a powerful point: when someone feels that you see beyond the facade, without judgment, they begin to associate you with healing. This generates emotional dependence, trust, and, often, a connection that is difficult to break. But, of course, this requires ethics and emotional responsibility. If you want to apply this in practice, start listening to the repetition: stories told with restrained emotion, exaggerated reactions to mild criticism, laughter that hides sadness. Each of these signs is an invitation to go deeper. And when you touch these wounds with respect, you activate what is most powerful in any relationship: the feeling of being understood in a place where almost no one has been able to reach. In the next topic, we will talk about one of the most intense triggers: sexual and romantic desire. Few triggers are as powerful as sexual and romantic desire. It moves choices, changes routes, and can turn a simple conversation into a whirlwind of emotions. But here's the key point: true desire isn't born of the obvious, it arises from the invisible, from what's hinted at, not delivered on a platter. The mystery, the contrast between presence and absence, the subtle play of interest and independence. All of this is fuel for obsession. Lucas was never the type to flirt shamelessly. On the contrary, he was selective with his looks, spared words, and gave compliments that touched being more than seeming. And this caused a curious effect. People began to want to find out more, to ask themselves what he thought, to want attention. His strategic absence was often more seductive than any insistent presence. The secret is to activate emotional desire before physical desire. When you connect with another on a soul level, when you see, validate, respect, and create tension, the body responds naturally. But be careful, do not confuse seduction with neediness. Showing too much desire can nullify the mystery. Being always available reduces perceived value. The human mind desires what seems rare and emotionally intense. If you want to apply this elegantly, reduce the number of words and increase the impact of gestures. Create tension with pauses, steady stares, and intentional silences. Use scarcity as a tool, not as punishment. And remember, the desire that remains is the one that never feels completely satisfied. In the next topic, we will see how Lucas brought together these triggers to become essential in any social group without having to force anything. Lucas was not the most talkative of the circle, nor the center of attention. But, little by little, it became indispensable. How? Masterfully applying the triggers you have been learning here. He validated without flattery, recognized weaknesses with empathy, and knew how to withdraw at the right time. With this, he aroused curiosity and left space for people to feel his absence, and that's when the obsession began to grow. One of Lucas' secrets was timing. He knew when to speak, when to listen, when to be present, and when to disappear for a few days. This created a kind of emotional dance that kept people engaged. No one felt totally safe with him, but no one wanted to let him go either. It was a balance between emotional comfort and mild discomfort that activated the social brain constantly. Another important point: he did not reveal everything about himself. I shared stories with layers, created little narrative gaps that made others want to know more. Instead of dumping his entire life, he would drop strategic details, usually in moments of high emotional charge. This made every interaction feel like a discovery, and our brains love the feeling of deciphering someone. The result? Lucas became the kind of person everyone wanted to talk to, ask for advice, share secrets. He didn't need to attract attention, attracted naturally, like a social magnet. And all this without forcing, without manipulating, just observing, applying, and respecting the limits of others and your own. In the next topic, we will understand how this influence can be even more powerful when almost no one realizes that it is being exerted. There is a type of attraction that does not scream, does not beg attention, and does not stand out in an obvious way. It is the one that grows in silence, that gradually infiltrates someone's mind until it becomes a constant presence in thoughts. This is invisible psychological attraction, and, when applied well, it is one of the most potent forms of emotional influence that exist. Lucas mastered this art. He did not use catchphrases or exaggerated gestures. On the contrary, he knew the strength of a pause, the impact of a direct look, the power of a strategic absence. He was noticed for what he did not say, for what he implied. And that created a sense of emotional mystery that left people curious, intrigued, and without realizing it, connected. The human brain hates gaps. When he doesn't fully understand something, he tries to fill in the missing pieces. And that's precisely what makes someone psychologically addictive: the mixture of emotional depth with a lack of total clarity. Lucas offered connection, but he did not give himself in a predictable way. He left questions in the air, created tension with his calm posture, and always seemed to know more than he said. Want to start applying this? Slow down the pace in conversations. Instead of responding quickly, think, observe, choose words with intention. When others expect a reaction, be quiet. When everyone is showing off, be at peace. Contrast generates impact. And when your emotional presence is discreet but constant, you become unforgettable even if no one can explain exactly why. In the next topic, we'll turn the focus inward, how to identify your own triggers so that you too aren't easily manipulated. Before you can master the triggers of others, you need to understand your own. Because, you see, those who do not know their own emotional weaknesses become hostage to anyone who knows how to activate them. Self-knowledge is the shield that protects you from subtle manipulation and, at the same time, it is the foundation of your emotional presence. You only become unshakable when you know exactly where your vulnerability lies. Lucas learned this the hard way. At one point in his life, he found himself surrounded by someone who used the same triggers he used on others. He fell in love, lost control, and nearly collapsed emotionally. That's when he realized as long as he didn't recognize his own shortcomings, such as the need for validation, the fear of abandonment, or the desire to be admired, he would always be vulnerable to those who knew how to play with them. Doing this self-analysis does not require a spiritual retreat, but rather radical honesty. Ask yourself, what compliments destabilize me? What takes me out of the center when someone speaks? What emotional patterns do I repeat in relationships? Write it down, observe, reflect. Their triggers aren't weakness, they are clues about what still needs to be healed, strengthened, or simply understood. And the bonus? When you know yourself deeply, you begin to act with more intention and less reactivity. Your presence becomes firmer, your communication clearer, and your energy more stable. You stop being an emotional puppet and become the protagonist of your own narrative. And in the next topic, we will put this into practice with a powerful exercise in social observation. Knowing theory is great, but if you don't practice, nothing changes. So here is a simple and powerful exercise the next time you're in an environment with other people, whether it's in a conversation, a coffee shop, or even a meeting. Choose to be more observant than talkative. Your goal: silently identify the emotional triggers of at least 2 people around you. Pay attention to facial expressions, themes that evoke the most emotion, and words that are repeated more intensely. When someone gets too excited about a subject or suddenly closes down, that's a sign. Observe what causes sparkle in the eyes and what causes discomfort. It's not about judging, it's about training your eye to understand what's behind the surface. Write down small details in your mind or on your cell phone. If you're disguised, who seeks more attention? Who avoids direct gaze? Who always tries to tell a better story than others? All of this is emotional material that reveals insecurities, hidden desires, and unmet needs. And the more you sharpen this perception, the sharper your power of influence becomes. This exercise, if done frequently, transforms you. You begin to understand what motivates people, what attracts them, and what repels them. More than that, you learn to position yourself intelligently in any social scenario. Because true influence doesn't come from talking nicely, it comes from noticing what others haven't yet understood about themselves. And that's where your differential begins. Now that you know the secrets that turn simple interactions into deep emotional connections, the question is, what are you going to do with this power? Will you keep it to yourself, or start observing the world around you with different eyes? Remember, the silent influence is stronger than any rehearsed speech. And true mastery is not in controlling others, but in mastering oneself. Have you noticed which triggers affect you? Have you ever been able to identify in someone that desire disguised by validation, or the fear that paralyzes under a facade of trust? Every conversation you have from now on can be a laboratory. Every look, an emotional map waiting to be read. But be careful, the more aware you are, the more responsibility you will have in how to use this knowledge. If something inside you has awakened to die, a desire to be more noticed, to become more magnetic, to no longer go unnoticed, then it's time to take action. Start with small steps. Observe, listen, reflect. Don't try to change the world all at once. but change the way you are in the world. And, over time, you will see people will start looking for you, even without understanding why. If this content made sense to you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell and leave your comment below. This is just the beginning. In the next few videos, we're going to delve even deeper into the power of the mind, presence, and silent influence. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, and remember, whoever dominates his own internal universe, dominates any room he enters.